We are back from the ad break, and that was CCMB and BB Winans with I'll Take You There. Now, I'm just going to bring Grantley GT Haynes. He's here in the green room, and I'm just going to bring him up on stage.
Good morning.
Good morning, Grantley GT Haynes.
Yeah.
How are you? Welcome to the show, and thank you for joining us as well.
Gosh, it's nice to be joining you on obviously GY Radio, Lady
Yes,
P
thank you.
presenting. Great,
Thank
thanks
you.
for having me.
You're most welcome. Are you all refreshed? Because I spoke to you yesterday. You were quite knackered, weren't you?
Yeah, I definitely was. It doesn't
Yes.
happen that often, but when it does, I need to take stock and remember that I'm not Superman.
Exactly. We all need to do that. We can't be burning the candles at both ends these days, can we?
No,
Okay,
no,
cool.
definitely not.
Cool. Well, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. We're going to have a bit of a chat today, in actual fact, because I was researching you. There's so much there is so
Uh,
much to talk about. But first and foremost, let's talk about this book.
right.
So this here is the British Reggae Music Industry, a Windrush Legacy, my story.
Yeah.
So when I received this book, I thought, wow, this book is detailed. It's a very thick book. There's about 500 odd pages there. But the
Yeah.
great thing about it, though, is that the print is not tiny. So
It, it's it's easier on the eyes
it's
than
easier
most
on the eye.
books. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I've managed to scan through a few pages.
Yeah.
And what I'd like you to do first and foremost is just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll delve into aspects of the book. We're not going to give the whole book away because we want
About
people to buy that
myself.
book. Yes, yes.
Well, like, you know, if people read the book, I grew up in a normal West Indian family. My parents were from Barbados. I was
Right.
born here in the UK.
Mm,
And, I was inquisitive and shocked by watching Roots and realizing, wow, now I understand why people treat me and other black people the way that they do.
mm,
And I thought, wow, what am I going to do about this? Because I'm 11, 12 at the time, you know what I
mm,
mean?
mm, mm,
And obviously, I'm growing up in my parents' house, but my father used to have some really good friends around that used to talk very incessantly about politics, the politicians in Barbados, the politicians in the UK at the time. I remember being about 5 or 6 when my dad was talking to his mates about Enoch Powell
mm.
and, the Rivers of Blood speech and didn't know enough about it. So I had questions, but the beauty of my relationship with my dad was that radiogram, the blue spot radiogram, because that's all we had, and the television, which was a coin up television that you used to have to put half a crowns in. And if anybody knows the old money, half a crown was like 26 pence.
Okay.
You used to have to put that in, and you would get about half an hour or an hour's worth of television, and then it would just cut out.
So you had to really plan TV viewing in those days then.
Yes.
Mm,
So, and my mother would sometimes frantically run next door to see if they could lend her half a crown,
mm,
the back of the TV.
mm, mm.
So I grew up thinking, I don't really want to do this. And I remember my dad saying to me, the reason why I want you to go to school is because he said, going to school is about learning to read, learning to write, and learning the language of English. So I want you to speak it. He said, because English is the widest language in the world.
Mm.
So if you can speak English properly, people will listen to you. And I heard that. And you know, my dad ruled with an iron fist, as some of our parents did,
Yeah.
and there was hell to pay if I didn't go to school. So I did quite well at school. I learned, I was in the top stream, and I was okay. Now, what I learned then was that Blue Spot radiogram, and I used to play his records, and he used to come in, who's been playing my records? And it was me and my sister that were playing the records and using the radiogram. But, we formed an alliance and we never ratted each other out. And, you know, even when we were going out of the house and going to parties or whatever, we stayed with this alliance. However, then I worked out, you're approaching leaving school age. But a year before that, you got to do your CSEs,
Yes.
GCSEs, and whatever.
Yeah.
And I worked hard and I did well. So I came out, but I still didn't get the job that I wanted to get when I came out of school. So after a couple of factory jobs, I then decided to be a chef, and I became a good chef. I worked in Birmingham, I worked in London, I worked in, Luton, I worked up and down some of the best hotels, and I decided that I wanted to become a DJ. So
Mm.
I became a DJ. And I became, for Birmingham, I became a pretty good DJ. I had
Mm.
two residencies. I used to be out on a Friday and a Saturday night, most Fridays and Saturday nights. So I got to the point where I was earning more from doing the music than I was doing earning my 9 to 5. And my dad still didn't believe in it. So he said, you carry on going to work. So I carried on. And what changed my life was when I got friendly, became friends with Smiley Culture and Asher Senator.
Mm.
And that came up because the sound system that I was part of when I was about 16
Mm.
was a sound system called Duke Wally. And we started to play dub plates. Now, playing dub plates meant that you had to find them, you had to get them. So we went to London and we made links with Coxson's Festus, Coxson's Natty, Coxson's Blacker Dread, Prince Jazzbo, people like that. And we bought dub plates, but we also became good friends.
Mm.
So sometimes when we'd go down to London, they were doing gigs, as Sir Coxsone.
Mm.
So they couldn't really go to the studio with us and cut dubs. So we ended up having to sleep on their sofas or their floors. And I remember, Black Dread saying to me, come on, me have a place around this, so just come man. You can block at the floor or me give you something fit. You're all right, man. So I was fine. So doing that got me connected. I didn't realize it to that extent at the time. But then when I worked in London, because I got a job in London as an assistant head chef at a British Telecom
Mm.
headquarters in Bank.
Mm.
So I was doing that. So obviously I had to stay down there. So I used to stay at my uncle's house in Tooting, just up the road from Tooting Broadway Station. So while I was down there over the weekend, I'd go to dances. At that time, Saxon was on their way up. Yeah. So I got the chance to meet Smiley Culture and Asher Senator. And Smiley and Asher, we had such a tight relationship that when I used to come to London, they would look after me. When they used to come to Birmingham, I would look after them. And
Mm.
so the relationship grew until one night at or one afternoon, um, Smiley was performing at the Lyceum,
Mhm.
and this was a big reggae night, but it was an all-dayer, sorry. And you had Steve Walsh there, may he rest in peace. You
Amen.
had lots of other DJs, and you had David Rodigan there. And I'd gotten there at the time when Pato, who I knew from growing up in, Borsal Heath, Birmingham, said to me, "Yeah, you're right, G, blah, blah, blah." I said, "When you going on?" He said, "I'm going on I've been on already." I said, "How did you do?" He said, "All right." It was all right. So just as he said that, Steve Walsh and David Rodigan said, "We need somebody to fill this space." So I looked at Pat and I said, "Go on and fill it, man." He said, "I've done tunes already." I said, "Nah, man, go on and do that tune that I've heard you chatting." He said, "What tune?" I said, "Hello, Tosh." He said, "Hello, Tosh. That's a stupid tune, man. It's a joke. You can't want me to do that.
Mm.
I'll do something like mash up the telly, or, I'll do something like King Step or something like." I said, "Nah, man, them tunes are not going to do anything for this crowd." I said, "Do Hello, Tosh. And if I'm the only person jumping up and down, then I'm willing to make myself look an idiot." He said, "All right, then." So I went over to David Rodigan, because we was backstage. So I went over to David Rodigan and I said, "Have you got Every Posse Get Flat, the B side?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Why, who's coming out?" I said, "Pato Banton." So
Mm.
he announced Pato Banton's coming back on to do a little something. He started the tune. Pato comes on doing a dance at the time called the Chaplin, where you sway from side to side. Yeah. And gosh, he came out and he started, "This one is a data check. This one is a data check." And, "Hello, Tosh, got a Toshy, but. The place mashed up. The place. Rodigan lifted up the tune about 7 times. And if anybody's listening that remember those times,
Yeah.
that's what happened at the Lyceum.
Mm.
So everybody wanted to talk and interview Pato Banton after that time. So it just wouldn't stop. You know, he couldn't get through the lyrics.
Yeah.
So that was the beginning of me being a reggae music manager.
Right. And so,
And I left then and went into, because after 14, 15 years of management in the reggae business, traveling the world, I introduced Pato to the United States of America,
yes.
Ferrari the same,
Yeah.
Peter Spence the same. We toured excessively South Africa, Botswana, Zimbabwe, uh, Ghana, Gambia. Um, it was nuts. I never got the chance to really spend any time with the family.
Mm.
It was just relentless.
Mm.
So I decided, my sons at the time were 8 and 9, and I'd always said to them, obviously I'd been to California and I'd experienced, Disneyland and Hollywood and Sunset Boulevard and all those places.
Yeah.
And I said to them, I'm going to take you. When you're a kid, you think, "Ah, Dad's only joking." So I finished the music industry and I signed up to do my degree. So I started a degree, Bachelor in Philosophy and Education,
yes.
and I majored in youth and community work. And then straight after that, so that I wouldn't go back into the music business straight away, I decided to I decided to go straight on to do a master's in criminology.
Yes.
And then almost 2 years after that, I did an MBA.
Yeah.
So I wished I'd done that. But what I did do, I realized what I had a thirst for education coming from my dad and my mum at that time, when I was young. So when I realized now that I'm in the business, of the music industry, I read about 4 books. Yeah. And gosh, let me tell you, those 4 books, they're up there now.
Mm.
They're still up there. Those 4 books. And I read them cover to cover
Yes.
in about 3 months. So when I was negotiating the deal with Ireland, negotiating the deals with Greensleeves, negotiating the deals with all these different record companies, I knew where I was and how to pitch my artists. And sometimes I'd be in meetings and they'd be looking at me to say, where's all this coming from? But I had read, even Pato used to look round at me sometimes and he'd go, where are you getting all this information from?
Mm.
Tipper the same. You know, Tipper will always tell you, Grantley taught me how to make money in the music industry
Mm.
from publishing, from this, from that. You know, Grantley knew how to manage a meeting, you know. So that's what I learned. But I took that into when I became a drug and alcohol counselor.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was a team manager, so I managed the team, I set it up, and I got that experience from learning how to, you know, learning the stuff that I learned on the road when I was on the road, watching people use cocaine, watching people use smoke weed. Not that I've got anything against any of those drugs, really.
Mm.
I just realized that sometimes people need something to help them do whatever it is they
Mm.
want to do or how they want to feel.
Mm-hmm.
Now, sometimes they need help in how to not use substances or even medication, how to
Mm.
do that without the medication or without the drugs. So my line was, I'm going to set up this team. I'm going to use alternative education. I'm going to use auricular acupuncture. And where I learned that from was New York, a guy called Dr. Michael O. Smith. So I set up a crack cocaine team in Birmingham,
Mm.
and all of the treatment modalities were part and parcel of self help.
Mm.
So we'd go out, and then later on, I got a bus and went round the city of Birmingham working with young people, helping them to understand that, antisocial behavior isn't the thing. If you want something different, if you want to learn how to be a businessman, then this is the way. If you want to learn how to dance and to sing, this is the way.
Mm.
But
Mm.
you always need mentors. That's why
Mm-hmm.
in that book, you'll see mentors,
Yes.
because I really believe in the things that I've put in that book. You know, you might find that there's a couple of mistakes here or there, but without mistakes, you can't grow.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's who I am.
Yes, and that captures it in a nutshell. So I'm going to delve into all of those things. First and foremost, I was looking on your website at your degrees. Oh my God, I thought I was educated.
Oh gosh.
And you've got 2 master's degrees,
Yeah.
then you know what I mean. That's saying something. And if you particularly a master's in business administration, and I dare say that particular degree probably enabled you to sit at several tables and have those very important discussions. So let's talk about the book first.
Yeah.
The first thing, one of the things that you mentioned as you were talking about the sound systems.
Yeah.
Okay, and in here there is a page here about the British sound systems. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, the British sound systems,
Mm.
for me, were the radio stations of reggae music
Mm.
because that's the only place that you could go to hear reggae music in the
Mm.
early days, unless you had a blue spot gram.
Right. So when you say sound systems, people would gather round in those days. It's not like
Yeah,
today
they'd
when
gather
yeah.
round in
Mm-hmm.
people's houses.
Mm-hmm.
They'd gather round, we had one rooms, didn't we? And
Mm.
they'd gather round outside of this one room and, you know, but then you got to the sound system itself, what we
Mm.
all know as a sound system,
Mm-hmm.
stacks of speakers,
Yeah.
on top of speakers with amplifiers, and you would play music from about 9 o'clock in the evening till 2, 3, 4, 5, or whatever
In the
in the
early morning.
in the morning
Mm-hmm.
before they had, you know, the they brought in the sound barriers and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Drive round, we used to hear from about a mile, sound systems playing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
Mm-hmm.
how we would know where to find the blues parties.
Okay, so let's hold that thought for a second because I meant to ask you something before that because that's getting into the technicalities of what music was and how reggae music became popular back then.
Yeah,
But the first thing I wanted to ask is the book here. You say it's the British Reggae Music Industry, a Windrush Legacy.
right.
It's that bit that I want you to talk about now, the legacy of the Windrush.
Yeah.
Give us a little synopsis on that one.
Well, I don't just go into talking about the
Mm,
Windrush
mm-hmm.
because the Windrush only relates to the ship that
Mm-hmm.
brought most of the West Indians
That's correct.
to Britain.
Mm-hmm.
What I start talking about is Africa and how Africa sold slaves not just to Britain, but to other parts of Europe and other
Mm,
parts of the world, like America and such like. So you got to imagine that the internet started by a guy in the UK,
mm,
but everybody's got the internet now.
yeah.
So, similar to the internet, think business now. I want to make huge amounts of money, and England and Portugal, because it started with the Portuguese,
Yes.
right? They're making huge amounts of money. So, let's send people abroad and let's go to Africa, in particular West Africa, because that hub there is the easiest to cross in terms of the Atlantic Ocean to
Mm,
Britain or to Portugal or to the United States of America.
mm,
That way is the easiest and the quickest. So you go to Africa and you gather slaves, hundreds of them. Now, some people think that the British or the Spanish or the Portuguese that go to Africa and start rounding up these slaves. No, it never happened that way.
mm,
These slaves were already there,
mm,
captured by Africans for
mm,
Africans,
mm,
right? In a similar way that
mm,
Hitler tried to capture other parts of Europe
mm,
and enslave them. So that was happening. That was a thing back then.
mm,
Okay. But what, when an African nation captured slaves, they would just incarcerate them and get them to do work for that nation, yeah, within the
mm,
African continent itself.
mm,
But what happened was because the slave traders got to Africa and they saw all these people incarcerated, they said, well, we'll buy them.
mm,
So obviously, the money was good or the exchange was good,
mm,
and Africans sold the slaves that way. So it wasn't that they saw themselves as selling out, they saw themselves as trading. What took place and what was totally different is the way they treated black Africans
Mm.
on the route of the transatlantic route
Mm.
to the Caribbean, to America. And that's what the film Roots shows or depicts. You
Mhm.
know, that horrific, tragic, the raping of women and so on and so forth. So you get to the West Indies, whatever part of the West Indies you get, and they build up training camps. Now, the main training camp was in Barbados.
Mm.
They would train slaves or slave traders on how to do these things.
Mm.
This is how you train a slave. This is how you stop them from escaping.
Mm.
But it didn't happen in that way in Jamaica because Jamaicans had a rebellion called the Maroons that went up
Yeah.
into the hills. Now, this is the beauty, and this is where the real body of determination and strength comes from in black people. So you're now looking at, okay, they're thinking, no, it's not worth having these slaves because they're too rebellious. There was only a couple of rebellious slaves in Barbados. One of them was Bossa. He's really revered in Barbados. And you can find a statue of Bossa on the ABC highway. If anybody knows that, they'll see Bossa in the middle with his
Mm.
chain.
Mm.
So it's a good. So when I'm going to Barbados or Jamaica, I'm looking for these things. I'm on an educational trip. I'm learning constantly.
Mhm.
So going back to the Windrush. So Britain, after the war ends in 1945, and Britain is demolished, smashed to pieces. So half of the men, or a lot of the men that went to the war had died. So they didn't have the manpower to rebuild the UK. So obviously, where are we going to find them from? Which is why Britain today says we need people from outside of the UK to come into the UK to do some of the work that needs doing.
Mhm.
That's not because they're being silly, that's because it's a thing. If they haven't got them, they're going to suffer economically.
Mm.
And anybody knows that has done economics knows that there's a thing called the three E's: economy, efficiency, effectiveness.
Mhm.
If you cover all those, you're going to survive. And that even means for an individual, learn about those three things.
Mhm.
Which is why then when I'm studying this, I'm thinking, I understand it now. So, from a business point of view, the Industrial Revolution followed that pathway. From a business point of view, the Conservative Party at the time said, we've got to find manpower. Where are you going to find it from? You find it from the colonies.
Mm.
Who were the colonies in particular? The Caribbean.
Mm.
So they put out an advert. We need you to come and do jobs in London on the buses, jobs in the hospitals, jobs on everywhere.
Mm.
Because it wasn't only things that British people didn't want to do, it was things that couldn't be done by anybody because there was nobody to do them. So once that had happened, that's the action that the government took.
Mm.
Now, when Enoch Powell realized, goodness gracious me, we're letting in so many different people, that his part of his speech included, if we're not careful, the black man will have the whip hand over the white man. And you know what that's going to cause. And it
Mm.
caused it. So it caused that backlash. It caused that problem. So that's where racism, I think, really took its root,
Mm.
because then people started to hate black African Caribbeans because there were black African Caribbeans.
Mm.
Irish, they also hated, but when an Irish man doesn't talk or an Irish woman doesn't talk, they're seen as just a white person.
Mm.
I turn up with my black skin and they see a black man,
Mm.
so I can disrespect him, or I can treat him differently, not because of who he is or what he's done, but because of the color of his skin.
Mm-hmm.
That's racism.
Yeah.
And because it came top down, as in from the government to the ground, that's why it's systemic. So if somebody doesn't understand what systemic means, it means that's what it means, that it's within the government structure.
Yes.
And the government is the partnership, police, fire, health, all of those things. So it reached right across from
Mm.
central government.
Mm-hmm.
So that was Windrush.
Okay.
So we got here, and because we got here, my parents settled, and they said, "I'll stay for 5 years, 7 years, and go back home." But because of the pressures, because of the costs, because of the fact that they had no money, they stayed longer and longer. And by that time, we'd grown up,
Mm.
and the rest is history. People can
Absolutely.
understand it because they can pick that up.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's the impact of the Windrush on you musically. Did that?
Yes.
Did
And a lot of others. You
yes.
talk about Aswad, you talk
Yes.
about Steel Pulse, you talk about um, the Cimarrons,
Mm.
because the Cimarrons were part of the Windrush.
Mm.
So some of them were British, some of them were Jamaican,
Mm.
young people that came here
Mm.
because their mothers and fathers had sent for them or whatever, but they
Mm-hmm.
grew up here. So they're
Mm-hmm.
British. But they were British back in the West Indies,
Mm-hmm.
because the reason why we were British, or my parents were British, is because they had British passports.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So that
So
being the
Aswad,
impact.
for instance, sorry,
Mm-hmm.
Aswad, for
Mm-hmm.
instance, they grew up recognizing Jamaican music. Steel Pulse the same, even UB40 the same.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
when I speak to Ali, Ali loves Jamaican reggae.
Mm.
Us, there's nobody more passionate about reggae music than Ali Campbell,
Mm-hmm.
and he walks his talk.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it wasn't for Ali Campbell, there wouldn't be Bitty McLean,
Mm-hmm.
there wouldn't be Pato Banton in the way that there is,
Mm-hmm.
there wouldn't be a lot of other artists like Kingston Town.
Yeah.
When they did Kingston Town, redid Kingston Town, they gave the money through publishing, through the hits that they'd made, to the artists. That's when the artists first started getting paid,
Wow.
right? Again, before that, for people who think UB40 is just a reggae covers band,
Mm.
before they even did covers, there was King, which talks about Martin Luther King.
Yes.
Where are your people now? Chained and pacified, meaning
Mm-hmm.
that the energy that he had and Malcolm X had has been pacified by
Mm.
the system.
Yes.
So these guys, food for thought, Ivory Madonna, that's talking about Africa,
Mm. Mm.
sing our own song. Starts off with the great flood of tears that we cried
Yes.
for our brothers and sisters who died. Over 400 years, they've washed away our tears
Oh,
and
dears.
strengthened our minds. Now we've turned back the tide. You've got to put them in the same bag. Then you talk about Papa Levi,
Yes.
Ferrari, Saxon's Studio, Maxi Priest.
Mm.
Maxi Priest didn't start off as a lovers rock singer. Maxi Priest started off with tunes like In the Ghetto.
Yeah. Yeah.
All we want is some peace
Some
in the
peace in the ghetto.
ghetto.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why I? And Chomi Khan, them tunes. And then he came with, yeah, the big
Yes.
reggae lovers rock. But he still came back and tunes like Marcus, you know what I mean, working with people like Handel, Tucker, and so forth,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But I'll tell you one thing, why I decided to write a book about the British reggae industry is because Jamaica recognized Britain and the music that Britain and British reggae had, from Sting, from Isaiah Lang, from Tommy Cowans, from Anthony Johnson and Sunsplash, that they brought Pato, Tipper, Maxi,
Mm.
Steel Pulse,
Mm.
Aswad, all to Reggae Sunsplash,
Yes.
1987. Now, nobody's going to do that unless there's a big reason for doing it.
Mm.
So we can be proud that England, but I didn't think that the British reggae part was celebrated enough.
Enough.
Yes,
Mm.
Lovers Rock is celebrated, and it's great that that's the case. But sometimes you're thinking, well, I was thinking anyway, what about the British MCs? What about Maccabee? What about Tipper? What
Mm.
about Smiley Culture?
Mm-hmm.
What part have they played? And it should all be together where
Absolutely.
people can have a look. And not only lovers rock, there's loads of lovers rock singers that I talk about in the book
Yes.
that aren't celebrated worldwide. I think their voices needed to be heard.
To be heard. Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
think people need to talk about them and know about them, not in the UK, but
But
right across
globally.
the world.
Globally.
And that's where
Absolutely.
this book is going.
Okay. So let's hold that thought. I want to play a song by Pato Banton. This one is called My Opinion.
Ah,
Yeah. Okay. So let's listen to that and then we'll come back.
Hey guys, I can feel the love tonight. I can feel the love tonight. This is my opinion. Life is what you make it. If you see an opportunity, I know you better take it. And don't you mistake it. And don't you fake it, no. The golden rule, don't you break it. So life can be a fantasy or a life is what you make it. If you see an opportunity, I know you better take it. And don't you mistake it. And don't you fake it, no. The golden rule, don't you break it. See, life can be a fantasy or a reality. It's just a state of your mentality. Don't lose your soul to vanity. It's insanity. Come show some love for humanity. My name is Pato Banton. Yeah. And this is my opinion. Life is like the Matrix. You've got to free up your psychology, and no man can erase it. There's a natural mystic blowing in the air, yeah. Science cannot trace it, but I can feel it, hear it, see it, smell it. I can even taste it. My name is Pato Bantan. Yeah. And this is my opinion.
Okay, so that one there was Pato Banton. This is my opinion. I actually really like that song. I like the lyrics of that particular song because life is what you make it. For even just talking to you, you can tell that you've made something because that's what you wanted to make it,
Yeah,
based on your experiences. For instance, you talked about your dad talking to you about education.
yeah,
I mean, I think you're a very high achiever when it comes to education. And then you talked
right,
about your experience with Roots, and that fueling a need in you to bring certain things to the fore, and not just from a music perspective, but also from a mental health perspective as well, and helping people with perhaps with drug addictions and things like
yeah,
that. But back to this book, we need to talk a little bit more about this book, and we're not going to give everything away. But earlier on, I did ask about sound systems. And I ask this question because there are young people listening to this show as well. And there are people who don't know what these things are. And you talk about, in fact, you ask the question in your book, what is a slate or a dub plate?
yeah.
What are those?
A slate or a dub plate.
Mm,
A slate is a shortened word for dub plate.
mm,
Slate. You know what I mean?
yes.
So that's a shortened word. But a dub plate is an acetate, which is what, if anybody has ever pressed a record,
Mm,
what you have to do, you have to get an acetate, and that acetate, yeah, is what you cut or stamp the records with.
mm-hmm,
Well, a dub plate is that pre, yeah, that pre-cut before it goes to the pressing plant.
right, right,
So
right.
that's what a dub plate is.
Mm-hmm,
And that dub plate, if you break it down further, is when a sound system has a rhythm and they run the rhythm and they'll remix it in a way that's a one cut,
mm-hmm,
where no other sound system has that cut. And over the years, it's developed where a singer like Pato Bant and Tipperary or Maxi Priest
mm,
will sing over their own song,
mm-hmm,
but put different words or lyrics in it, you know,
right.
saying, well, this is Lady B and this one goes out to you,
Yes,
and
yeah,
only played by Lady B or whatever.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's only Lady B that can play that cut, that
Yeah,
record, and that's what causes the sound clash to be
uh-huh,
great
yeah,
or underrate.
yes,
So
yeah,
the best dub plates are the ones that the crowd who understand what dub plates are
yeah,
will jump to.
absolutely, absolutely. I've got a comment here from Sharky DJ, who's one of my colleagues on GY Radio. He says the slate was made of metal.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, aluminium.
aluminium. Mm,
Yeah.
mm,
So it's aluminium, and it's pressed so that, as I said, you can then take it to the pressing plant,
Mm.
and then it becomes what the pressing plants use to
Hmm.
press record after record
Records.
after record.
Yes. And then you keep that aluminium plate.
That's right.
Almost like a copyright, isn't it?
Well, it's yours,
Yeah.
so it is like a copyright.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, the other thing is, you talked about the, how you were able to negotiate in the boardrooms.
Yeah,
Back in those days, when you had artists who were, well, perhaps before you came along to manage them,
yeah.
what was the experience of musicians, in the black musicians, particularly reggae musicians, in those days, if they were signed up? What sort of contracts did they get? What was the remuneration for them?
Gosh, the contracts was just, there were standard contracts really that
Mm,
you would give, say, Queen or the
mm-hmm,
Rolling Stones
mm-hmm,
or the
mm-hmm,
Beatles. So
mm-hmm,
usually an artist or a group would get, I would say, 20% would be a lot.
hmm,
So it used to be about 16% of the recommended retail price,
mm.
if you understand that.
Yeah, so if a record is sold for £10, the
Yes,
artist gets 16% of that.
that's right.
Yeah.
So 16 pence
Ooh. Was that a lot?
of an album,
Yeah.
and that was a lot. But that's only for the sale of the record.
Mm,
If the artist or the group wrote the record, that comes under another contract, which is
mm,
a publishing contract, which is a songwriting contract,
mm,
which the artist that pens the lyric or the person that's down as the writer of the song
mm-hmm.
would get an automatic 50%, or should get that. That's legal. And the composition would make up the other 50%. So somebody like Mozart or Beethoven, before, there was 45s or 33s even,
Mm,
Mozart would get the whole 100%
mm.
because it was all sheet music at the time.
Yeah, yeah.
So you would sell it on pieces of paper like that,
Yes.
written in musical terminology.
Mm-hmm.
But when the Beatles came along, that revolutionized the way that songs were structured. So that's where you get the songwriter
Mm-hmm.
and the music.
And then you get the voice as well, the singer.
Well, the voice and the singer
Mm.
was the recording part, as I said.
Right.
So you got recording rights. And to do that legally, to be able to put an artist's name visually on, you need a contract,
Yes.
because the artist have to give you permission to do that. So
Mm-hmm.
if the artist just tell you, yeah, I agree, unless they say that in a court of law, which is, yes, I did say I agree with this, or it can be proven that through a number of different structures and things that have happened that the artist must have agreed, or else it wouldn't have happened in that way,
Mm-hmm.
then you would either win or lose the case.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
But nowadays, they can track who owns what from a number of different ways. There's
Absolutely.
loads.
Loads of
If
different
anybody
ways.
wants to prove, oh, since the birth of the internet, that they've written a song, it's quite easy to do that.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the internet by and by. There's one other thing I wanted to ask you very quickly. Top of the pops.
Along, you have to be there for the whole day.
Yes.
and 3 minutes performance. And usually that performance wouldn't be done live. It'd be done, where you mime it.
Mm. Mm.
So this Top of the Pops for me was, I'd understood Top of the Pops by then because, you know, you Top of the Pops is the vehicle that propels at the time your song
Mm.
from the midweek chart. So
Mm.
you got charts that are midweek charts. This is going back to how Gallup was in certain shops and Gallup was not in other shops. So if you were clever, you'd work out the shops that Gallup used to have returns for the pop charts, and you would get your records into those shops so that they would record the sales.
So Gallup, just for everybody's knowledge, is some sort of a poll, is it?
Yes,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
yeah. Gallup was the poll that
Mm-hmm.
constructed, how many songs were were sold in this shop, that shop,
Yes. Yeah.
and the other shop right across the country,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's how it worked.
Yes. Yeah.
So midweek, they would know, say a song like Hello Darling. Hello Darling looks like it could enter the charts.
Mm.
So Top of the Pops would call you and say, we want you on Top of the Pops next week because you've hit this number midweek.
Yes.
So it almost means that by next week or by Sunday, you're going to be in the top 40. Remember, there's only one top 40.
Yes.
So if you don't get in the top 40, you're going to languish and your song might sell a bit, but it's not going to really be propelled by Top of the Pops and other shows like Tiz Was,
Mm.
Saturday Morning Superstore, the
Mm.
TV programs for the kids. Because
Yes.
once you get into the charts, that's what happens. All of the TV, the media then descend upon you. And that's when you now have to, that's why you need management at that level,
At that
because
level.
you need to organize between the record company, yourself, and what you particularly want to achieve as an artist. That has to be managed because an artist can't do it all.
Mm. Mm. And that management side of it, we'll talk about that after this next question now, which is the internet. How has the internet impacted on reggae music today?
Wow. In a major way,
Mm.
because I don't think we still yet have really understood how the internet and streaming,
Mm.
because, okay, first of all, you have the vinyl record, the 45 or the album. Then you had, or before that, you can talk about cartridge.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You can talk about tape cassettes. You can talk about then the birth. What came next was the birth of the CD.
Yeah.
You remember when albums was about £10?
Yeah.
CDs then was, some of them costed £16,
Yes, I
but the
remember.
quality was that good that people were happy to pay the £16 for a good album.
Mm.
Then came the MP3 digital. That's when the internet came about in the 1980s, right? So
Yes.
now you have digitalization. So artists would go along and they would sign up to a thing called MySpace.
Yeah. God, yeah.
All right. And MySpace would go around, but the world hadn't caught up to MySpace.
Mm.
because you still had dial-up. You remember?
Yes, dial up connections. Yeah.
Right. So it would go, then
Yeah.
you get a connection. Yeah.
Yes.
But then when fiber optics came, that's when the speed of internet came.
Yeah.
And then you had the phones. Remember the Nokia phones, early days?
Yes.
Remember the
The little
the
bricks.
yeah?
Yes.
So then you had digital phones. So you remember before that there was text messaging. You can still have text messaging now, but that was a new thing.
Yes.
To have text messaging. But then you had digital. So you could now see somebody in front of, you're calling them up and you could see them in front of you.
Yep.
The birth of the Apple iPhone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So revolutionized. So with that Apple iPhone 15 now, you can do more with that. People don't realize that in the 1980s, the early 80s, you were still sending messages by fax machines. Some
And
people still were using telex machines.
and the airmail.
Yeah.
Mm, yeah.
So with the internet became email.
Mm,
With email became the MP3. So instead of going and buying a new record, somebody could send you a new record.
mm.
And on a CD player, you could house 30, 40, 50 songs on one CD. So then you had CD copying instead of cassette copying, which is
Yes.
what Blue Saxon and the sounds of those that time, because you had sound tapes,
Yes.
sound clashes on tape, cassette.
Absolutely. So,
So,
do you think that the internet has impacted reggae music adversely, or has it been a a help? Has it sort of like,
well, both I would say, but for reggae, I
mm,
think adversely because the audience of reggae, because the majority of us are older than 40, 45,
mm,
we take a little time to catch up with technology.
yes,
Now, if you look at reggae music stroke, um, grime,
mm,
they grew up through that internet revolution. So grime has catapulted, similar to Afrobeat, boom, gone,
yeah,
because the artists are of the age that has grown up with the internet revolution and the digital revolution,
mm-hmm,
and most importantly, digital audio workstations.
yep. You
So
can
you got
actually you can create a song on your Apple phone.
That's right. So
Yeah.
you got a digital audio workstation, and for anybody that is not familiar with a DAW or digital, you just ask them about Fruity Loops, Logic Audio, Cubase,
Mm,
those those programs. That's a digital audio workstation where you
right.
can record a vocal
Mm,
and music onto a digital impact, like a hard drive, or
yeah.
you
Yeah.
know or even a cloud. You can
Yeah.
upload it onto the cloud. So right now you could finish a song and send it to America within a day or within a
Absolutely.
minute.
Mm-hmm.
Before, if you wanted to send or to collaborate with somebody in America, you'd have to send a 24-track master tape
Mm-hmm.
via FedEx through, an airplane. And at the end of that period, it would get there probably in about 2 days. They'd then have to load it onto a studio in Los Angeles or Jamaica, get the artist to do it there, then send it all the way back.
Yes.
Nowadays, you can do it like you and I are talking now.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's so what we need to do is we need to understand streaming
Okay.
and how the digital revolution has changed music, not just reggae music, but music in
In
general,
general, yes.
and what bits we want to take from it and what bits we're going to leave alone, or
Absolutely.
get a whole host of people to join together and work together to develop companies that can put stuff out in the same way that Tyler can.
Yeah. So we're going to touch on that now. Well, I want to play a song. This one is "Stand by Me" by
Peter Spence Tipperary.
yeah, yes,
Yeah,
and
one of my
then
productions.
yes, it's one of your productions, and then we'll come back and talk about My Boyz Beatz.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So here we go.
Now all the ladies, search for the man you love and stick by him, stand by him, or give him up. When the night has come, choo choo, and the land is dark, long is the only light you see. No, I won't be afraid. I won't be afraid. Just as long as you stand by me, darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand now. Stand by me. Stand by me. Darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand now. Stand by me. Stand by me. Coming and the dancing and the party and club. Hold me, girl, time to the sweet rubber dub. When me squeeze alright and then me kiss and me over. I'm on this and you me just stand in a look. Like a stamp to a letter, now me stick up in a look. Like a bird to a feather, me a stick up in a look. To the up and the down, me a stick up in a love. And to the war and crime, me a stand up in a love. If the sky we look upon should tumble and fall, what the mountains should crumble to the sea. Sing out. I won't cry. You know I won't shed a tear just as long as you stand by me. Darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Stand by me. Darling, darling, stand by me. Won't you stand by me? Oh, stand now. Stand by me. Stand by me. They say all them attack and one me still step up in a low. All them attack and one me still stand in a low. All them attack and one me still step up in a low. All them attack and one me still stand in a low. Them a chat behind me back, but me step up in a low. Them a send this and that, but me stick up in a love and hang a stead and cough fat. But me stand up in a love, me love me girl to the max and me step up in a low. If the sky we look for should crumble and fall, and the mountains tumble down to the sea.
Okay. So that one is one of your productions.
Yeah.
I'm well aware of that because I.
My opinion is as well.
Oh, is it really
Yeah.
fantastic? So you see, you were talking earlier on before we played that music. We were talking about having companies who basically create the pathway
Yeah.
to enable both the young and the old, particularly those older artists who aren't that au fait with technology today,
Yeah.
that creates that pathway. And My Boyz Beatz is one of such companies, from what I understand.
Yeah.
which is your when did you set up? When did you realize that you needed to set up that organization or that company?
Wow, it was by default almost
Yeah.
because I'd I'd taken a hiatus from the music business. Hiatus means, I'd taken a break
A
from it.
break, yes.
And it was the break in 1992, after working with Pato and Tipper and Peter for, on a full-time basis. And as I said, I went into education, I did degrees and whatever. So I've done all this now, and I'm now working on a midnight bus, something called a midnight bus around Birmingham, going into different neighborhoods, trying to divert young people from antisocial behavior and drugs. So we go to an area called Shard End in Birmingham, and this is a single decker bus, and we've got about 45 young people on this bus. We're playing music, we're doing sessions about sexual health, drugs, a lot of different things like antisocial behavior, safeguarding, all that lot. And we're talking to about 10 young people, and we said, we've got some money that we want to do something. Well, why don't you have a disco for young people? So now we want to do it better than that. And we decided to have a ball, a black tie ball, where the young people could all dress up, come along with their parents, and just have an evening of celebration for what they'd achieved. Because we'd worked with a number of young people, and they were all doing well, and we was really proud of them, and so were their parents. So we had this first black tie ball. But before that, we needed somebody to perform. I said, well, it'd be good if we could have somebody that danced. And I met this one girl. They all pointed at Chloe, this one girl. And Chloe said, yeah, I'll dance. I'm happy to dance. And she said she'll do it. And she said, and I said, anybody sing? Oh, Lucy sings. Who's Lucy? And this shy girl comes from the back. And she said, I'm Lucy. And I said, sing for me, Lucy. And after some real encouragement, she sang Pixie Lot's Cry Me Out. She blew my head off. I thought, wow, what a tone. And I said, I'd love to record you.
Yeah.
And she said, well, you'll have to talk to my mum and dad. Quite a long story short, I spoke to her mum and dad, Colette and Joe. And Joe got Lucy a lawyer, put a contract together, and Lucy Tennyson sung a song called Best of Me. I don't know if you've heard it. Maxi Priest's Best of Me. Brilliant song, brilliant vocal.
I've got it here, actually, I think. Yeah.
You can play 10 seconds of it.
Yeah, I'm going to do that right now, actually. Let me put that on for you
so that people can really understand what I heard and why I was driven to get back into the music industry.
Yeah. Okay, so this one is Best of Me, and this is from Lucy Tennyson.
Just for you, we shared our lives together for so many years. Into stormy weathers, through the joys and the tears. But oh, how this feeling, it's got me so confused. Feeling so rejected, feeling like I'm used. What more can I say? What more can I do? It seems I'm wasting my time trying to show you. You got the best of me, more than I can give, in every part of me. Just for you I live. You got the best of me, yeah, more than I can give, in every
Right.
part of me.
Yes.
So
She
I
does have a
heard that
very beautiful
voice.
voice.
Now, how old do you think she was?
Um, 15, 14.
14 years
Yeah,
old,
yeah.
Caucasian girl.
Yes, I see that. Yes.
And I said to myself, wow, okay, I'm going to do this
Mm,
because I always tried to walk my talk.
yes.
You know, it doesn't matter. So, to cut a long story short, again, I recorded Lucy, I recorded Miss Aaliyah, I recorded J Beats, I recorded Kezia Soul,
Yeah.
and that became My Boyz Beatz.
I
Working with
see.
all those James Crosdale,
Mm-hmm.
Major Popular, they were all part of it. And Keith Brown, my partner,
Yes.
you know, we built My Boyz Beatz. And I'm sure if we were talking back in the days of the Black Echoes charts, that would
Mm.
have been a number one.
Absolutely. 100. 100.
You know what I mean? So
Yes.
I then you had, because the internet or the way music is now, it depends on the artist.
Yes.
So the artist has to create a profile along with my profile, along with everybody else's profile,
Mm-hmm.
but the artist is the lead.
Yes.
You
That's
know,
what it is today. It's
yeah,
what's your following?
there you go.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
based upon that, although we did training sessions, you've still got to understand the mentality of somebody who never felt that she was a singer, never felt that she looked like a singer.
Mm.
But you've got this guy here that has been into the music business and he's saying, you're great. I
Mm.
think you can do it. So in the studio, I can pull it off. But outside of the studio,
Mm.
it then needs them and everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what life's like as a teenager, especially a female.
Mm.
You got your friends, and if they don't agree with something, you don't agree with it.
Yes, indeed.
So that's that's some of the complexities of management of in this day and age. So the artist now in today's management and music business structure, they've got to lead this, which is why again it's tough because sometimes the artists don't realize that they have to form businesses. They have to be the business. They have to say, I need a manager. I need somebody to look after my social media. I need
Mm.
somebody to look after where I go. I need somebody to look after my my hair and my makeup. I need
Mm.
somebody to look after my video shorts. I need somebody to tell me, where what I'm doing tomorrow. I need somebody to talk to this person, that person.
Mm. Mm.
And I also have to look after, my publishing or look after my songs or write songs
Mm.
and
Mm.
sing songs and get those right. It's a
And
big
and
thing.
and is this what My Boyz Beats does? Does My
Yeah,
Boyz Beats cover all of
all of
that?
those. Yeah,
So it's a one-stop shop, basically.
yeah,
So you get everything out of that.
that's right.
Fantastic. And I know there's quite a few songs that you sent me, which have been produced by your organisation, and is that in conjunction with GT Records? Because where's the GT?
Well,
What does that
GT
mean?
Records is the record label.
Mm-hmm.
My Boyz Beatz is the
It's the
production
production.
and
Okay.
end-to-end
Mm.
composition of
Mm-hmm.
what else needs to be in place
Mm-hmm.
for the artist to feature and do what they do.
Right.
So it's an end-to-end process.
Mm-hmm.
So GT Records as a record company label was put in place for Peter Spence because
Right.
I couldn't get nobody at the time that would record an album with Peter Spence. They'd record singles, but not a
Mm.
whole album.
Mm-hmm.
In order to take Peter Spence to America or outside of the UK, we needed an album,
Mm-hmm.
and that album needed to be licensed to different companies. That's how the music business triangle or structure was built.
Mm-hmm.
So some people understand what licensing is. That book shows you what licensing is, what PRS is, what syncing is,
Mm-hmm.
all of those things. It gives you that. And I felt that the book needed to include that so that people could then understand what business they need to
Yes.
set up and what elements they needed to include to become as good as they could become. And that's what I didn't have.
Mm.
So I wanted other people to have it as well. You know, the mentoring, that you'll always find somebody that will say, try this, do that along the way,
Mm.
you know, but they won't tell you everything,
Yeah. Yeah. Facts. Facts. Facts.
right?
I, yeah. I've got to say, I mean, I was going to only have you on for an hour. It's 1.5 hours already.
Oh, God. I'm sorry.
There is no. I've really enjoyed it. It's been very, very informative, first and foremost, and I hope that there are people out there who are trying to embark on the music industry that would go out and get this book here. This is the British Reggae Music Industry, a Windrush Legacy, My Story by Grantley Haynes, uh, or GT as we call you these days.
Yeah,
But I've got to say, and basically what I tried to do was cover just little elements of it so you could talk about that. And I ended with My Boyz Beatz because that's what you're doing now, isn't it?
yeah. We
Yes.
do musicals and stuff like that.
Yes,
So
yes.
those young people that have gone through that process
Hmm.
also took part in the musical Mirrors and Makeup, which,
Okay.
so it's not just acting or it's not
Mm,
just singing or it's
mm.
not just dancing. It's a
Fant-
combination,
fantastic.
which is all under the auspices of performing arts.
Yes.
And apart from that, it's also other things that are embodied in it. There's learning, lots of learning.
Absolutely.
Life skills is involved in that. When people look at you and tell you no, what do you do?
Mm.
I was at Sandra Cross's event
Yes.
on Friday, and I told a story that Sandra agreed that I could tell.
Mm.
And one day I was managing Sandra Cross, and I said to Sandra, are you all right? She said, no, not really.
Mm.
And I went, why? And she said, well, it seems like the shows are not as many as they used to be. And I said,
Mm.
well, that's natural. We're going through a different phase right now. And it's not about PAs, it's more about live shows. She said, but no, the cost of a live show to make money from it, not a lot of promoters can do it. I said, so that means we got to take it outside of just the UK. It's got to be worldwide. So now we've got to build you up outside of the UK.
Mm.
She went, how long's that going to take? And I said, probably about 2 or 3 years minimum.
Mm.
And she said, well, what do I do now? Now, you think about that and you're laughing, you're smiling, because that's a big question
It is.
and
Yeah.
it deserves an honest answer. So the honest answer I gave, I said, well, get a job. She went, me get a job? You want me to get a job? Where? I said, or diversify. Start doing a Sandra Cross coaching session. You're a great singer. You're a singer that can sing the 7 notes of a chord.
Mm-hmm.
Your harmonies are incredible. teach people how to do it. And she wasn't. Me and her didn't talk for about, I think it had to be about 8 weeks.
Mm.
And I thought I've really upset her. And I never wanted to upset Sandra. But Sandra said, I wasn't upset. You taught me a big lesson.
Absolutely.
You taught and you were honest.
Yes.
And she came back later with a Sandra Cross choir. And then she's come back with the awards for unsung reggae heroes.
Yes.
Now look at that. And
Yes.
Sandra is, nobody would ever say that that's Sandra Cross, but they
Mm.
know that Sandra Cross now. And I'll tell you that reggae awards that she's done will go on for years if she wants to do it that way.
Yeah.
But people now know, wow, what an achievement
Absolutely.
from a reggae artist. Now that's a legacy that her children and her grandchildren can be part of
Yes.
and be proud of, as well as
Absolutely.
people like you and I.
Absolutely.
So that
Absolutely.
was my intention all along, the same way as what Pato's doing in the US now,
Yeah.
the same as what Tipperary goes on to do now. He's
Yes.
one of the hardest workers in the British reggae music industry, along with somebody like Maxi Breeze.
Yes, indeed.
You
Indeed.
know, I love these guys and what they've done,
Mm.
and I want to see more people do it because that's the way that British reggae will have a future.
Absolutely, and we need it to have a future, to be honest, because
Yeah,
British reggae has been very impactful over the years. I mean, I listen to British reggae, and it basically, particularly when it's conscious reggae, I love it. I
there
really,
you
absolutely
go.
love it. Yeah,
And where did
yeah,
the consciousness come from? The
yeah.
consciousness came from strife,
Yes,
depression, you know,
yes. Life.
unfair treatment.
Yeah, yeah.
You
The
know,
life we live.
why
Yeah.
did Aswad write Three Babylon?
Mm-hmm.
You know, Three
Absolutely.
Babylon traffic make and I run.
Yes. Mm,
Why did Steel Pulse David Hines write, you know, Ku Klux Klan?
mm, absolutely.
You know, why did UB40 write, you know, those songs? One in ten.
I've got to say that we could go on. We could go
Yeah.
on. There is so much. And if you haven't already got this book, please do get this book. You can get it on Amazon. I got mine from Amazon. Where
Or
else can
from
we
my
get this?
website,
Or from your website, which is?
www.wheeler, that's WHEELER, Street, STREET, Products, PRODUCTS.co.uk.
There you go. And say it all together, Wheeler Street Products.
.co.uk.
Good. So you can get your book from Amazon or from wheelerstreetproducts.co.uk.
Yeah.
Grantley Haynes, thank you very, very much. I hope to have you on again soon, and we'll be chatting later because I will be reaching out to you. But thank you so much for the wealth of information and knowledge that you have brought to us today.
Well, thank you for having me, Lady D.
Oh,
Yeah.
you're most welcome.
Thank
It's a pleasure.
thank you to GY Radio.
Yes.
And I hope to be back soon.
Yeah, I will be inviting you
You
back
know,
soon.
I've got a
Yes.
book launch that's
Yes.
at the Ritzy in London
All
on the
right.
12th of January.
All right. Is that for this book?
Yes,
Because I thought you launched it last week.
no, no, that
Ah,
it was published last week.
I see.
The
Okay.
Ritzy in London, in
Mm-hmm.
Brixton.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll
Yes.
send it to you.
Please do.
Yeah,
Please do.
so it's the Ritzy in London on the 15th of January.
Yes.
David Katz is going to be interviewing me.
Wow.
Yeah, so I hope to see people at the launch. And if,
Yes.
and if it's in Birmingham, I've got another launch at the Holiday Inn, Junction 7 of the M6.
Oh, yes.
And
And when
that's
is
on,
that?
yeah, and that's on the 12th of February.
Okay. So for those of us who live in London, you've got a book launch on the 12th of January,
The 15th of
on the
January.
15th of January at the Ritzy.
Yeah,
Okay. Please
which
do
is a
post me that
Wednesday.
information. Yeah. Post me all that information
I
because I
will
will
do.
put it out there when I do my shows.
Okay,
All right.
super.
Thank you very, very much, Grantley
Thank
GT
you again.
Haynes.